Welcome to the Leveled Women podcast, where we're redefining strength, reclaiming our identity, and healing louder together. I'm your host, Brittany, and today's episode is called Healing from the Inside Out. If you've ever felt like you were walking around, smiling while shattered inside, this episode is for you. Before we get started with the episode, I'd like to encourage you all to join our email mailing list. You can do that by clicking on the link below this podcast, depending on the platform that you're listening on, and going to our website. And there is an option to enroll in our email mailing list. This gives you access to different promotions and programs and tools and services and events that are happening and that we are providing. And it just helps us stay connected. We want to provide you with resources, information, insight, different events, and as much information as we have to help in aiding the leveling up of women in our community and abroad. Also, before we get into the podcast, I'm going to ask you all to follow us on our social media pages. So we're on Leveled Women on Facebook. We have a Leveled Women Instagram, and also a Leveled Women's YouTube page where a lot of these podcasts are going to be posted. Also, I want to ask you all to share the podcast. Share the podcast with anyone that you know that's interested in becoming more leveled. I created a video a few weeks ago, I believe, on the YouTube channel, Leveled Women, going over what it means to become more leveled. So if you are interested in growing and healing and becoming more level-minded, more self-aware, loving yourself more, being able to love others better, being able to build our communities, being able to inspire and pour back into ourselves and build what it is we want to build and tap back into our dreams and do what it is we're called to do. If any of that sounds good to you or to anyone that you know, we want them to be a part of this movement. We want them to be welcomed in Leveled Women, and we want to help everyone. And we also want to help ourselves become as leveled as we possibly can be. So the first point that I want to talk about today in relation to healing from the inside out is what emotional wounds look like. So not all wounds are visible. Many are emotional, relational, and generational. And it's really important to negate the stigma that mental health experts have. And I believe it's getting better as time is going on, but going to therapy, I had the awesome opportunity to be mentored by a therapist, a licensed therapist. She's been in the industry for I think 20 plus years. And I met her while I was doing my psychology internship last year. And I learned so much from her, so much about dictating notes and different diagnoses, different medication and different CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy options and plans. And what I learned is that therapy is so beneficial, even if you don't feel like you need it all the time. And so I've taken a step back in a lot of areas in my life just to kind of reassess and think about how I feel about certain areas, how I feel when I'm doing certain things, and just making sure that what I'm doing every day is aligned with my ultimate goal. And then also going back to the drawing board and asking myself, hey, do you still have the same ultimate goal as you had for yourself last year? Is your life still on pace? Are you still on track to accomplish things that you anticipated accomplishing in the next 5 years? And kind of going back and just looking at the drawing board and making sure that everything is aligned and asking myself how I feel. What are my triggers? What do I find myself getting frustrated with? What gets me frustrated? What do I find myself getting sad about? And really examining those and also getting into therapy. There are so many different programs and therapy platforms now that are available to assist. And I myself have tried some of the therapy programs, and I really enjoy like the virtual face-to-face therapy options that are available now and the phone call therapy options that are available now. There's just so many options. And so we are partnered with one online therapy platform at this time. And the information is going to be on our website if you're ever interested, or you can leave a comment and I'll send you an email over. But that is something that I've started to really devote more time to. My mental health, just making sure that I am checking myself, checking on myself in every aspect, not just going to eye appointments, not just going to my doctor appointments, not just going to my hair and nail appointments for self-care, or what we thought self-care was, or what we were told self-care was, maybe, some time ago, but actually really taking care of our entire self, and that includes our mind. The next point that I want to go over is signs of unhealed pain. Okay, what that may look like. So it may look like people pleasing, becoming numb, being quick to anger, over explaining, and self abandonment. Okay, so I used to have a very hard time with telling people no. For example, I was in high school and I would always call on my grandmothers for advice. And um, someone wanted to go to a party, a house party. And I never really enjoyed house parties because I just didn't. The music was always loud, and um, it just didn't seem like people were at their highest vibration to me. It just wasn't my setting. But I always wanted to be a well-rounded person, and I never wanted to be someone or a one-sided friend where I'm like, hey, I'm only going to do what I want to do. I'm not going to ever do anything that interests you. So as long as it was safe, as long as no one was getting hurt, even though the music was loud and I couldn't dance and I didn't really know a lot of the people there at the parties, and I didn't really like the atmosphere or the activities, to be honest, but I still went. And I went because I had a problem with saying no. I didn't really know how to communicate effectively to even my friends that, hey, this is not something I want to do. And so that's when I was younger. Fast forwarding to me becoming an adult, some of those habits stayed with me. And I remember my grandmother telling me that no is a complete sentence. No does not need any other explanation. You don't have to elaborate on it. You can just say no. And so I began to adapt that. So there would be certain events or certain things that people will want me to do, and I would say no. Certain people would want to go certain places, or maybe talk about certain things, and I'm saying no. And so people pleasing, doing what people want you to do, becoming a yes man, and just saying yes all the time, despite how you feel, can be a sign of unhealed pain. Okay, not being able to be true to yourself, not being able to speak your truth, not being able to stand firm in what you believe because you're afraid that someone may get their feelings hurt, or someone may not want to be friends with you anymore. And so those are some things that we can work through on becoming more leveled. And it doesn't mean that when you're saying no, it gives you an excuse to be rude, or it's not our excuse or our card to say I don't care about anyone else, but it's really a form of respect for both parties, being completely upfront and truthful with whoever you're in conversation with, and also being completely upfront and truthful with you is a sign of self-love. Okay, and that's why I mentioned a little bit ago earlier in the podcast, a lot of times, I would see advertisements for self-love, and there would be a woman getting her hair done, and her nails done, and her feet soaked, and nothing wrong with that. That can be a form of self-love. However, there's a deeper meaning that we like to talk about here in Leveled Women in regard to self-love. Okay, how are we loving ourselves? How are we showing up for ourselves? How are we speaking truth to ourselves? Okay, and then numbness. So realizing that you're no longer feeling certain ways toward things that you should have feelings toward. You're no longer caring about certain things that you used to care about before. For example, you may no longer care about journaling when journaling was a passion of yours a few years ago. You may notice that you no longer care about getting up early and saying your scripture and prayer, or doing your scripture and prayer, excuse me. You may find that you no longer care to go outside and go on a walk when you used to love walking. And so some of those actions can be signs that, hey, maybe it's time to get back to me. Maybe it's time to cut out some things that are on my plate so that I do have enough time to reinvest in things that are going to be great for my mental health and healing. Okay. And then I want to leave you all with a quote before we move on to the next point. And this quote is, unhealed trauma doesn't just go away. It hides in how we show up. Okay, so even if you're not dealing with your trauma, and even if you've become numb and you're just going day to day, it doesn't mean that it's gone. it's still embedded in us, and it still comes out in our daily lives and what we're doing. And even if you don't feel like it's coming out, a lot of times it does. And those are the triggers that so many people talk about. I was triggered by this, I was triggered by that. And although healing is a continuous journey, we want to make sure that we're being intentional with that. The next thing that I want to talk about is how you can use some tools to help with healing. Okay. Now, journaling is a huge tool in my life. I enjoy journaling. I've always enjoyed journaling. And I used to journal so often when I was younger. My grandmother would take my cousin and I to Barnes and Nobles. She would take us to different stores. We would get to pick out journals, nice pens, and we would just write in our journals about whatever we felt. I was really big on poetry then. I was really big on just expressing myself and just using the pen and paper as an outlet. And then I noticed the older I got, the more my plate got filled up, I got away from that. And so I've been intentional about getting back to journaling, and it's felt so great. I made a video on the Leveled Women channel talking about how it feels good to get back to reading and journaling, some of the things that I have neglected because of so many other things going on in my life. And so journaling is a mirror, okay? It helps you uncover what's beneath the surface. It also can guide you through clarity and release. And you don't have to write right, just write honestly. Okay, some journal prompts that you can use to get started with this exercise consist of, what am I still carrying that doesn't belong to me? Or who am I without the pain I've gotten used to? Another prompt is, what do I need to forgive myself for? Some of the most painful truths I faced came out on paper before I could speak them out loud. So writing gives your inner self permission to speak. The next part that I want to talk about is self-forgiveness is the breakthrough. So self-forgiveness isn't just letting yourself off the hook, it's letting yourself off the cross. So you are not your choices from a broken place. You can honor who you were and still choose who you're becoming. And what you may want to write in your journal to help with this healing process on forgiveness is, I forgive myself for what I didn't know, who I became to survive, and for carrying what wasn't mine. Okay. Just an example, a lot of us hold guilt for staying too long, for not speaking up, for giving love that wasn't returned. But healing can bloom in a heart weighed down without blame. One thing that I want to mention is a scripture. And the scripture that I love, it reads, all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. I love that scripture because it's so true, and it allows me to better forgive myself. Just like I mentioned, sometimes we are mad at ourselves and we hold ourselves past the point of accountability, and we start to beat ourselves up. Jobs that we've accepted that we feel like, man, I shouldn't have accepted that job, for accepting jobs with great pay, but then being away from our children or feeling like we could do more. There's so much weight that women carry. And so even through the pain and even through some of the guilt, God will transform your life and use what you've gone through as a testimony if you allow him to. And no matter what you're going through, God can use all of that for his good. He can use all of that for good. And I want you all to know that. I'm a true testament of that. Okay, the next thing that I want to talk about, okay, is affirmations of the day. With every podcast episode, I want to close out with affirmations, just something to leave us with. So the affirmation for today is, I am worthy of healing, even when it's messy. I release shame. I welcome grace. I am not broken. I am rebuilding. Okay. I want to thank you all for tuning into the Leveled Women podcast. Healing from the inside out takes courage, but you don't have to do it alone. If this spoke to you, take a moment to journal tonight, or even just sit with the words, I deserve to heal. Be sure to follow and share this with a sister who needs to hear it. Until next time, keep leveling gracefully, boldly, and beautifully. I'll talk to you all later. Bye.